What's up, everyone? My name is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator and host of PowerfulInterviews.com. I am a partner of NationalDiversified.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, successful businessman. He is an international business consultant. His name is Marco Robert. Marco Robert is the best-selling author of his phenomenal book, which is called Business Intervention. In this interview, you're going to hear exclusively how Marco Robert, he breaks down layman's terms about entrepreneurs need to create systems for their business. Also in this interview, Marco Robert, he breaks down layman's terms about, he created a system which is called BOSS, and he consults entrepreneurs and business owners on how they can increase their net worth and how they can scale their businesses to the next level and much, much more. So remember, this is not BS information. The right information will change your current situation. Wealthy people, they take advice from other wealthy people, and unfortunately, broke people, they take advice from broke people. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes. In this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, successful businessman. He is an international business consultant. His name is Marco Robert. This interview, it will change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications on. That way you be well informed when I publish more successful audio interviews. So, check it out.
Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Marco Robert to the show.
Wow. All I want to do is woo-woo. Yeah, that's a great intro, my friend. Thank you so much, Arthur. Appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Marco, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about how to increase profits and about building wealth. I gladly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, my friend. Happy to educate. That's my mission. It's the mission I live every day.
To everyone that's listening, I highly recommend go and get your pen and your pad right now. My great friend Marco Robert is going to break down layman's terms about how to increase your top-line revenue and how to build wealth. Is that correct, Marco?
Absolutely.
Now, what I'd like to know, can you explain to the audience in layman's terms, who is the phenomenal Marco Robert? How long you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise?
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for opening it up for me like that. So basically, you know, I'm a French-Canadian guy. I was born and raised near Montreal, Canada, and my story really began in 2001 when I moved to California. Before that, I owned some businesses around the world. I lived in Guatemala. I lived in the Bahamas. I lived in Mexico for a while. And I owned some businesses in those countries. But in 2001, I moved to California, and I decided to go into the world of consulting. I decided I was going to start sharing my knowledge with business owners starting in California. So at a very young age, I understood this idea that successful businesses are successful mainly for one reason, because they reside on a foundation of systems. Right? I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but successful businesses are businesses that are based on systems. So if you're a listener, if you're listening to this right now and you're wondering, okay, how do I build my business? How can I be more successful? The number one rule is you have to systemize everything, because systematization will allow you to predict the results that you want, number one. Number two, it will allow you also to start delegating some of the processes to other people, and which will allow you to focus on other things and grow your business beyond what normal, average, ordinary people can normally achieve. So I understood that at a very young age, and it allowed me to build kind of a mini empire by the time I was 30, 31 years old. And then I decided to go into the world of consulting. Well, the first problem that I came across when I wanted to consult was that there was no such thing as a system for consulting with businesses. So that's one of the first things I did. I created a methodology, a system to work and influence the results of business owners. Today, the system is called BOSS, or Business Optimizing Strategic Systems. Or in other words, it's a series of systems that any business owner can use to strategically optimize their business, right? So, and so I built a consulting practice with this, and then starting in 2010, I exited my practice and I became a speaker. And now I travel around the world and I train business owners on how to effectively systemize their business using my BOSS systematizing model. That's kind of the essence. Does that make sense?
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you say you travel around the world and you teach entrepreneurs on how to systemize their business, and you mentioned that powerful word, delegation. Now let's talk about delegation. Now, the minimum wage of a millionaire is around $524 an hour. So I always tell my listeners, what can you delegate for $524 an hour? Or you can go way beyond that. What can you delegate that's within your current budget? How important it is for entrepreneurs and business owners to delegate tasks out that they're not currently good at so they can just focus on increasing their top-line revenues in their businesses?
You know, honestly, I don't think there's anything more important than that, right? But the problem is this. Here's where the problem resides, Arthur, right? The problem resides in most cases in the self-confidence that business owners have. You know, we live in a world where so many business owners are driven by their egos. See, the ego is a good thing because it helps you start your business. It helps you rebel against the world out there and say, you know what, I want to be different. I want to achieve more in life. So instead of having a day-to-day job, I'm going to start my own business. But very, very soon that ego, that same ego that launched you, becomes an impediment in your ability to actually grow your business to the next level. So it's not rare for business owners to not even want to delegate because they feel like it would take away from them. They have this erroneous idea that building a business is simply about hard work. Hard work is only one element of building a business. It's basically like saying, imagine a great pastry chef who would say, great cakes are about butter. Well, it's not really true, right? I mean, you need good butter to make a good cake, but the butter doesn't make the cake. Just like hard work does not make the business. It's a lot more than that. At some point, you need to understand that in order to grow your business beyond yourself, you're going to have to start delegating. The first process of delegation is really this emotional connection with yourself, and be willing to actually understand that you won't be able to grow by yourself. You see, one of the things that I teach a class, it's called the myths that are guaranteed to sabotage your success. Right? It's one of the classes that I teach, and in that class I talk about one myth. I call it this idea in America that we believe in self-made millionaires. Right? There's so many people out there who just want to become self-made millionaires. Well, it's not true. There's never been a self-made millionaire. There will never be a self-made millionaire.
That's
the
true.
only way you can become successful is by teaming up with other people, by partnering up with other people, by willing to delegate, by empowering people around you. That's how you become successful. So, but we were trained from a very young age by watching TV and all these delusions that the goal is to become a self-made person, and then we're driven by ego. It doesn't work like that.
That is absolutely true, Marco. And you must empower the people that are around you, because once you empower the people that are around you, that's making your team look better. And when you build a team, you got to build a solidified team that's going to help you be committed to building that business and building that brand. So once people like you, respect you, and know you, that's when their minds are made up and they want to invest in you because you are your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It always starts with the brand. I travel around the world and I notice how, there's in some stages, for example, where I'm not very well known, but I go and represent somebody else's brand, and people don't even know who I am, but I'm acclaimed before I show up just because of the brand that somebody else's has. So so that's kind of the way that one of the ways that you can do it. One of the ways that you can actually grow your business is to borrow somebody else's brand, right? You see a lot of people understanding the power of celebrity, for example, right? So by connecting with other celebrities, you can actually borrow their brand, and it helps build your own notoriety. So I have done that a lot in my life. I have been fortunate enough to share the stage with a lot of Hollywood celebrities, a lot of sports athletes, a lot of music celebrities, and it's really affected my brand and how people actually see me today, right? So
right.
Absolutely, branding is a very important and essential part of building a business.
So you're saying borrowing off of the celebrity brands where people that are well known in their respective fields. So basically that's borrowed credibility, and that's leverage. And leverage is speed, and leverage equals money?
Yes, absolutely. You know, like I'm going to be in South Africa coming up soon, right? Mm-hmm. And when I go to South Africa, a lot of people don't know who Marco Robert is in South Africa. So I work with a local brand it's an event promoter in South Africa who has been connecting with the local entrepreneurs for over a decade now. So he has a very strong brand. And when he says, I'm going to bring a good speaker, well, people actually want to show up, and they're willing to pay a big bucks to come. They don't know who I am until that point. They're just trusting in that person's brand. So I think you've hit the nail right on the head when you said it's all about leveraging. I remember when I was in college and I heard the concept. I never really heard the idea of leveraging before. Mm-hmm. And I remember when one of my teachers, it was in finance. We had a class on strategic finance, and one of my teachers started to address the concept of leveraging by playing different elements of the balance sheet, you know, by moving things around in the balance sheet. Mm-hmm. And I remember leaving that class thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be so rich. Because once you understand leverage, it's amazing. And I leverage everything. I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of a story. One of the ways that I actually became successful is by building restaurants, right? So my first career was in the restaurant industry. In fact, my parents owned restaurants when I was a kid. So wow. I was a restaurant manager at a very young age. I ended up getting a degree in hotel and restaurant management. It was kind of the natural thing for me to do, right? Mm-hmm. Then I worked in the industry for a few years. And then at the age of 27, I opened my first restaurant. And one of the things that I like I said, already at that age, I understood this concept of systematizing. But one of the challenges in systematizing is to find the time to systemize. Because, see, when you're opening a restaurant, you're working, you know, I was probably working 100 hours a week when I first opened my first restaurant. So how do you find the time beyond the operations to actually systematizing? So I came up with this concept, this leverage concept. So what I did is I realized that there were 4 major areas of my business that needed to be systemized. Mm-hmm. One was the team. You know, I needed to have the best people working in my restaurant, and it had to be trained properly, right? So this idea of team. The second one was all about the finance and the operations. The third one was about customers. How did my customers, were they happy? Did they want to come back? All of that needed to be systemized. You know, we needed to organize events. We needed to create some promotions to make sure the customers were interested in coming back. And we wanted to have fun with our customers. And the last one is sales and marketing. How do we attract new people? What kind of strategies are we going to put in place for increasing sales? Where are we going to put the advertising dollars? All of that needs to be organized and systemized. Well, I didn't have enough time. So what I did is this. I decided to leverage some of my employees mm-hmm. and train them to think for me. So I would take a cook, for example, and say, would you be interested in working an extra half day per week? And I'd say, absolutely. And I'd take that cook, and I would spend a few hours with him and train him on how to systemize the whole team aspect of the business, right? So who do we need as a waiter? I want you to write a procedure for that. I want you to start thinking about a training. So basically, I had someone spending half a day a week doing some research for me and doing some thinking for me. See, most business owners don't spend enough time thinking. So I figured out this model to kind of outsource thinking to some of my employees. See, most of the time, if you run your business from an ego perspective, most of your employees are not given a chance to think. Right? People ask their employees, I want you to do this and that and this and that. This is how I want you to do this and this is how I want you to do that. So there's zero room for your employees to actually think. I did the complete opposite. I created a lot of rooms for my employees to think. And they built the business with me. And that's how I became very, very successful in the restaurant industry really quickly. Within 5 or 6 months, I opened my second restaurant. So I went from one restaurant to two restaurants very, very quickly. So,
wow.
Yeah, by leveraging. Understanding this concept of leveraging. It's one of the most important concepts of life, I think.
Yes, definitely. And I agree with everything that you said, and that's a powerful statement because everything that you want, someone else has. So when you formulate a partnership and you leverage, basically y'all are creating value for one another as well as you creating value for that marketplace.
Yes. And you have to think of the biggest successes in the world, like in systematization, probably the biggest success is a company called McDonald's, right? Just look at McDonald's. I mean, they're literally running an empire, a worldwide empire, with teenagers. How can they do that? It's very simple. They're breaking everything down to the most stupid, menial task possible. Everything at McDonald's is broken down into a simple task. And that task can be trained. You can train pretty much anybody to do that task. So when you start working at McDonald's, maybe the first 3 days, all you're going to do is you're going to put frozen fries in a basket, drop that basket in oil, and press the button. And when that deep fryer bell rings, then you know to lift the fries, shake the fries, and pour some salt on the fries. Right? It's very simple, but maybe you're going to spend 3 days doing that at McDonald's, when you start working at McDonald's.
Right.
Everything is broken down. So that's what I did in my business as well. I broke everything down into the most simple tasks possible. And today when I work with business owners, that's what I do as well for them. I show them how to organize their minds, how to think in kind of a sequential way. That they instead of thinking about just the big outcome that you want to reach, think about the menial tasks that you have to do to reach that outcome. Let me give you an example, if I may. So, for example, a lot of business owners out there, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, oftentimes what starts someone in the world of business is kind of this need to rebel and to affirm yourself. People feel like they were born for something greater, and they're like, you know what? I don't think the corporate world or the world of a job is going to be fulfilling enough, so I want to start my own business. But oftentimes it's driven by ego. So what you want to do is you want to move beyond that, right?
Right.
So because that ego, all that ego wants is that ego wants you to be kind of successful. So you're going to be able to build a business. Maybe you make $1 million a year, but then you're stuck there. So I want to show your audience the path, what I call the path to success, right? So the first step that you need to do in order to become really successful is you need to move away from what I call being a normal, average, ordinary person, or NAOP. Normal, average, ordinary people tend to have normal, average, and ordinary outcomes in life. And so having a business does not make you successful. You can still be a normal person and have a business, or you can be a normal person and have a job.
Right. So
that if you want to be successful in your business, you have to become what I call an outlier entrepreneur. The outlier entrepreneur is the person. The term outlier basically means someone who's completely outside of the norm, right? And the term entrepreneur means somebody who's devoted to the verb entreprendre from the word entrepreneur means to undertake, right? So an entrepreneur is someone who undertakes to change the world. In other words, an entrepreneur is someone who's on a mission to serve the world. So if you are someone who is not normal and who is also on a mission to serve the world, that's the first step. You have to be that person. And I've spent the last 25 years of my life studying these people who achieve more in life. And they're always these outlier entrepreneurs. Like, they do 4 things different than normal, average, ordinary people. Number 1, they tend to have this mastery over their own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
See, where most normal, average, ordinary people allow the outside world to affect how they feel internally,
mm-hmm.
outlier entrepreneurs do not do that. They control their emotions. It doesn't matter if it's raining outside or if it's shiny outside. It doesn't matter how much money there's in the bank account. It doesn't matter what anybody around them does.
Mm-hmm.
Internally, they feel good about life.
Right.
And I found that every single successful person is like that. Number 2, outlier entrepreneurs also have this dedication towards stamina. They want to have more energy than normal, average, ordinary people. You'll see outlier entrepreneurs sometimes they're in their 70s and they're still thriving because they have dedicated their lives to finding ways to have more energy. Right? And I don't want to give a course on how to have more energy, and I think everybody has to kind of find their own way.
Right.
But you have to have more energy, because if you don't have more energy than a normal, average, ordinary person, well, you are a normal, average, ordinary person.
And money is simply energy.
Yeah, and money is energy. Business is energy. Everything is energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for you to be able to have more energy is very, very important. Life requires passion, and passion is energy. Number 3, to be a successful outlier entrepreneur, you have to have this knowingness about who you are. You see, and I'm going into a little bit more of an esoteric, metaphysical, woo-woo area just a little bit. But the reality is that most of us human beings, we don't know who we are. We have this identity, we have this idea of who we think we should be based on the world we grew up in, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you grew up in Chicago, you probably see the world differently than if you grew up in Paris, or if you grew up in a different world. If your family happened to be rich, you're going to see the world differently probably than if your family happened to be poor. If you grew up Mormon, you're going to see the world differently than if you grew up Muslim, right?
That's right.
So, but all of
because
those
everyone
things
came up under different circumstances in different cultures.
Yeah, but all those things actually are nothing more than ideas or beliefs that we have about ourselves, right? It's not who we are. See, just because you happen to be born in Utah and you're Mormon, that's not who you are. There's a lot more to you than that.
Right.
Just because you happen to be born with a certain color of skin, it doesn't define you. It shouldn't define you. But what we do is we allow those outside factors to define us. So the truth is this. If you sit down with a psychologist and you start talking to them, you find out that most human beings don't know who they are. They have these identities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, outlier entrepreneurs know who they are. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. It has nothing to do with their political allegiances. It has nothing to do with their religious groups or beliefs or faith they were born into.
Mm-hmm.
They have found who they are. They know their own strengths and they know their own weaknesses. And that is what guides them. They're guided by leveraging, again, let's use that word again. They're guided by this idea of leveraging their strengths instead of trying to overcome their weaknesses.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com. Normal, average, ordinary people spend their lives trying to overcome their weaknesses just to fit in this idea that they have to be a certain way. So you have to shed that.
That's the third key to success to become an outlier entrepreneur. And the fourth and last one is outlier entrepreneurs also have this knowingness about the world. So they know the world. They spend their lives studying humanity. Because building a business is about building a relationship between people. Right?
That's right.
Business is nothing more than an exchange of value between two human beings. That's what business is. So if you don't understand the basic tenets of humanity, then it's going to be very hard to build a business. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I find that outlier entrepreneurs love to study psychology. They love to understand why people think the way they think. They love to understand philosophy, because they like to understand why do we think the way we think. Right? Sometimes they're students of religion, they're students of history, they're students of economics, they're students of politics, of sociology, all the sciences, all the social sciences that help us understand how the world works, how human beings actually think. And so think about this for a second, right? If you imagine a human being who devotes his life to mastering his emotion, to mastering his body, his physical energy, to really discovering who he is, with his strengths and weaknesses, and focusing his life on his strengths, and who really, really endeavors to understand humanity. Well, those people become really, really successful in the world. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the first thing that needs to happen. You want to become successful. It's not about marketing. It's not about branding. It's not even about accounting or marketing or none of this stuff. The first step to become successful in business is to become the kind of person who can build a business. And that's an outlier entrepreneur. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then what I do from that point is I say, let's create a vision. Okay, you want to become a successful entrepreneur. Let's create a real vision. I don't want you to make a couple $100,000 a year or even $1 million a year. Let's create a real vision. Okay, so if you feel inside of you that there is a flame, there's a desire for you to achieve more, you know it in the depth of your soul that there is a reason for why you are here, and you owe it to you, and you owe it to the Creator to actually make it happen. If you feel like that, then starting a business is only the first step, right? Mm-hmm. Second step is you become that outlier entrepreneur. The third step is now you're going to have to really become a great leader. You're going to have to become a great leader of people. You're going to have to learn about leadership so that we can grow that business, right?
That's right.
The next step after that is you're going to have to transition from being simply a person who peddles things and time. You sell products and services to someone who is willing to peddle units of business. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by that. What I find is that very successful entrepreneurs, at some point in their journey, they move from being shopkeepers to being people who transact in shops. So they sell businesses. So they become what I call a business investors, right? Mm-hmm. Business investor doesn't care anymore about whether we sell trees or carpets or whether we service people by cutting down their tree branches or by training their dogs, right?
Right.
They care about selling those businesses. So you become a peddler of business units, right? So you buy and sell businesses, and there's a lot of money. So now each transaction is not worth $12 or even $12,000, but each transaction is worth $120,000 or $1.2 million or $12 million. So that's the next step. And a lot of people get excited when I say that. Wow, I never thought of that. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the ultimate step. There's a step above that. See, the step above that is when you start to make a lot of money. If you want to continue to grow, you can become what I call a private wealth financier. A private wealth financier. And what do I mean by that? Well, in America, we have this idea of private banking, right? So if you have a couple $1 million, instead of going to the normal Bank of America branch, you can open a bank account with the Bank of America's private banking division, right? So now instead of when you need to see a banker, you go into an office. There's a plush leather chair. You sit down in an office with your banker. It's a private session. There's a secretary who comes in and gives you a coffee. It's called private banking. We have that in America. And it's okay. But there's another level above that. It's called private wealth banking. And private wealth banking is something that started mostly in Switzerland. And now those Swiss banks are all over the world, mostly in Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, and in some of those financial centers around the world. And private wealth banking actually gives people, now you're probably in the range of, $10 to $20 million. And you start investing your money in those banks. And the difference is this. When your money is in a private wealth banking system, it's the money that actually sustains the economies of the world. It's the money that can never be put at risk. So to be as transparent as possible, I'm going to say it like this, right? It's unfair. Mm-hmm. It's unfair to normal, average, ordinary people, right? Because, normal, average, ordinary people put their money in the bank, and if something happens, they lose everything, right? And then the bank gives them 0.01% if everything goes well. Mm-hmm. When you start putting your money into the private wealth banking system, you have access to instruments of investment that pretty much, if you want to, never put your capital at risk. You can start making 15, 20, 30% a year on your money, and your capital is never put at risk. This is where royalties have been keeping their monies forever, right?
That's right.
In a private wealth banking system. Now people say, wow, I never even thought of that. Yeah. See, there's another level. There's levels above what. So, and then that's not even the ultimate level. Mm-hmm. There's a level even above that. The ultimate level is this. I call it to become a sovereign citizen. The sovereign citizen is someone who not only do they have their money dispersed around the world in the private wealth banking system, but they also have reached a status where they have at least 2 passports, right? So now they don't belong to a single country. See, if you only have 1 passport, you kind of belong to that country. That country can basically do whatever they want to you, right? And I'm not a gloomy person, but if you just look at the financial disasters of countries, like countries that are very well known, like Argentina, for example, where about 15 years ago, the government decided to basically seize the money of all the people in the country. And you had nothing to do, because if you're an Argentinian, you had to kind of subdue yourself to the ruling. Just recently in Cyprus, Cyprus, I think it's even part of the European Union. And the government went in and basically took all the money in the banks and said, we need the money, right? And you have no choice because you're a Cyprus citizen. When you have 2 different passports, mm-hmm. you can start actually kind of playing, countries against countries. That's why I use the term sovereign citizen, because you really become a sovereign entity by yourself. You can live wherever you want at that point. You can do whatever you want, and you can really give back to the world, right? So the lesson in this is this. If you started a business because you have a feeling inside of you that you owe it to yourself and you owe it to the world to do something to change the world, well, the first thing you have to do is you have to change yourself. Become the kind of person who can achieve more. But let that flame fuel you. And then grow into someone who doesn't only sell things, but now starts selling businesses. You take risk and you transact in businesses. And then grow and then start exploring outside banking systems where you can start putting your money around the world. And then maybe you start looking into getting a second citizenship from a different country. That way nobody controls you anymore. You become a sovereign person, a sovereign citizen. And you can do, or you can be, or you can have whatever you want at that point. And at that level, it's time to actually give back to the world, because people who reach that level have discovered so much about life itself and how to to thrive on this planet, that they owe it to the world to actually share with everybody else how to do it. So when I'm given very little time to speak, I always like to share this potential growth that people can achieve. Mm-hmm. Because most business people are disconnected from this reality. You know, they fall in love with hard work, just like a baker would fall in love with butter. It makes no sense. There's so much more. There is so much more. How cool is that?
That's very cool. And I love the way you broke down sovereign citizenship by having two passports, because like you said, when you only have one passport, you basically belong to that country. But when you have two, you can basically travel all over the world, and you're not locked in to that one passport. And I love the way you broke down private banking, and there's a lot of wealthy people that's into private banking. And then earlier, you illustrated about the McDonald's system. Now, they sell crappy food, and I don't eat McDonald's, but they have a phenomenal system, and they are a franchise business, but they also make their money by real estate.
Yes. And you know what's funny is that, of course, you could say McDonald's is crappy food, but the one thing is for sure is whether you eat a Big Mac in Atlanta, Georgia, whether you eat the Big Mac in San Francisco or in Singapore or in Hong Kong or in Johannesburg, South Africa, you are guaranteed that the quality of the crappiness is going to be exactly the same. It's going to be just as crappy in Singapore as it is in San Francisco. They're consistent.
Right.
That's why they're successful.
Right, absolutely. And all these franchise businesses, they basically immerse themselves into execution and systems and processes, and the employees have to learn their training manuals in order to be successful. And in order to basically grow their top-line revenue, everybody has to be on the same page to take that brand to the next level. Now, you broke down private wealth banking systems, and I know the wealthy basically takes care of that. Can you explain to the audience in your own phenomenal way, Marco, how do you feel about family offices?
Yeah, okay. It's funny. I have a client in, actually, I'm not going to mention where because it's in America. He's he's not well known, but he's built a very successful business for himself. He's in his early 70s now. The gentleman actually has a manufacturing company. He owns a real estate development company, and he owns a financial company. And now he's thinking, well, I'm going to start divesting myself of some of those businesses. Right? So we've been working together for many, many years, him and I. He's been one of my clients for, I think, almost 7 years now. And this is the conversation that we're having at this stage. I say, now that you are trying to, he says, well, but I don't know what I'm going to do. If I sell my businesses, Marco, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, why don't we set up a family office so that now, because he's telling me, I would love to go on cruises with my wife, maybe meet an Italian billionaire, and then he invites us to come to his vineyard, and we sip private collection wines, and this is the kind of life that he wants right now. Mm-hmm. He said, but I also want to get excited about doing things. I want to continue. I want to continue getting busy. I don't want to just retire. He's a thriving entrepreneur. He doesn't want to simply retire. So I said, why don't we do this? Why don't we just set up a family office? Maybe we put a lawyer there. Maybe we put a real estate developer, and we put a secretary, and we put an accountant. And what we do is we announce to the world that we're open for business. And then we allow that real estate developer guy to analyze deals. And all we do is we let deals come to us. And then you can travel around the world. You can go to conferences if you want. You can meet with billionaires and taste their private reserve wines and go on vacation on their private yachts if you want. But once you're in town, you get involved, and you still have to make decisions about where do we put the money. So we can allocate maybe $15, $20 million to your private office to start with. He's got a lot more than that. But I said, maybe to start with, we allocate $15 to $20 million to your family office, and then we just start having fun. And all you do is you get involved as much or as little as you want. And he's like, wow, I'm very excited about that. See, it's playing the game at the next level. I think, up until probably 50 years ago, we never really heard that much about family offices because it was something only for the super rich and the super famous, right?
Right.
And you had to be almost royalty to have a family office. But you know what? Today, you have $15-20 million. You can have your own family office, and you can partake in some pretty awesome deals.
Right.
You have $100 million. Now we're talking about a sizable family office. And, there's almost literally nothing that you cannot partake in at that level. And it's not. And by the way, having a family office is not just about having a team who's looking at investments for you, but it's also the opportunities. Now there's associations of family offices around the world. And you get invited to these meetings, you get invited to these galas. And so, yeah, I think it's at some point, usually when you reach the level of a private wealth financier, you need to open your own family office. Absolutely.
Wow. Marco, this is an incredible interview, and I appreciate you coming on my show today.
Yes, absolutely, man. I love it. I love what you're doing. I love that you're willing to give so much of your time to your audience. I think it's fantastic. And I think they deserve to know really what's out there. They deserve to understand that building a business is not just about making an extra $100,000 a year. Building a business is a journey. It's a journey of discovery. It's a journey of self-fulfillment. I think it's Oprah who said she was delivering a speech at Harvard, and she said the purpose of man is to fulfill the highest expression of ourselves. I love that. I quote her all the time. To fulfill the highest expression of ourselves. I think that's why we're here. So you have to listen to that little voice. And sadly, there's so many people who don't hear it anymore. They've disconnected from that voice for a lot of different reasons. But if you're listening to this today and you can still hear the voice, if you still have the flame inside of you, first focus on becoming a new person. Become that liar entrepreneur, not the liar, but become an outlier entrepreneur, somebody who's willing to do whatever it takes to succeed, and then leverage that power to start building businesses and then transact in businesses. And don't be afraid to explore outside of the United States because, of course, the United States is a great country to live in. That's why I chose to live in this country. Mm-hmm. But, the world is a big place. The world is a friendly place. I traveled to over 30 countries in my life so far, and I intend to travel to a lot more. Actually, I'm going to be to my 31st country just this weekend. I'm going to Lithuania. I've never been there. 31st country. And I haven't seen a country that I don't like. It's a friendly place. So you have to be willing to explore outside of the boundaries of this country. And put your money where there's regulations, where there's laws that allow you to thrive as a successful individual. And then maybe you find a place where you like and you say I'm gonna get a second passport, and then you spend the rest of your life devoted to the betterment of humanity. I think that's why we're here, my friend.
Wow.
I think that's why we're here.
Well, I know a lot of billionaires. They are into philanthropy. They always looking to give back to charities or to nonprofit organizations. And I appreciate you coming on my platform and breaking down these wealth-building principles because the whole premise of my show is to educate entrepreneurs and business owners that they can live the life that they truly desire, but they have to be open to these important principles. So I don't like what I see what's on the news, so I create my own news.
Yes.
Marco, let's talk about the power of being an entrepreneur. Now, the word entrepreneur means entreprendre, and it was a Latin word, and it was invented in the 15th century in France. And a gentleman by the name of John Baptist, he invented the word, and over 300 years later, that word still exists, which is entrepreneur. So entre means between, and pendre means to take. So it means to take lower productivity and increase it to higher productivity. Can you explain to the audience how you're increasing your productivity in your businesses?
Wow, nobody has ever actually. I didn't even know that. I figured it was a French word, but I never knew the whole story behind the word entreprendre. That's really cool. Honestly, I think when people ask me, to talk about business, I always say this. I say my favorite words in business are results, performance, productivity, and systems. Result, performance, productivity, and systems, because these words actually are they're kind of very important to one another, right? You cannot have productivity without systematizing your business. That's the first thing that needs to happen. And many years ago, I was reading a book, and it was a story about Ivan Pavlov. If you remember Dr. Pavlov and the dog and the bell and the dog salivating, I don't know if you remember that story. But what Pavlov basically will be remembered for is that he helped us understand that we have this self-determined consciousness. In other words, when something happens in the outside world, we can react in a certain way, or we can choose to react in a completely different way. See, the rest of the animal kingdom, when there's an outside stimulus, they kind of always react the same way. Let me give you an example. If I have a flamethrower and I lift the flame in front of a lion, the lion is going to run away.
Right.
If I lift the flame in front of a human being, the human being may decide to run away or may decide to stay there. Right? We are self-determined beings. Right? So that's kind of the first. I lost my train of thoughts here for a second, but that's kind of the first idea of systematizing. So you have to start with systematizing your own life and understanding exactly where you want to take your life. So what Pavlov said is this. On his deathbed, his students came to him and said, Dr. Pavlov, what are some of the most important lessons that we need to learn about life? He said, life is about passion, and life is about gradualness. Passion and gradualness. So I remember, growing up and listening to Tony Robbins, and at the end of every tape he would say, life is live with passion, right? Every time I listened to Tony Robbins. I don't know if you remember Tony, but he used to say that all the time, live with passion. So I understand the concept of passion. I think you said it before, everything is energy. And
right.
To live with passion is to bring a maximum amount of energy into everything that you do. So I believe in that. So I think that's probably what Pavlov was talking about. But what did he mean about gradualness? And I racked my brain for probably about 2 or 3 years after I read that. And I couldn't figure it out. Until one day I'm sitting down with one of my clients, and I said, okay, let's figure out where we're going to go moving forward. I said, where do you see yourself in 3 years? And then this gentleman starts to define himself. And he says, this is what I want to see, this is what I want to do, and this is where I'm going to be in 3 years. And we're defining that target. And then I had kind of an epiphany. And I asked him, I said, let me ask you a question. If I had asked you 3 years ago where you saw yourself in 3 years, what would you have said then? And he said, I would have said about the same thing. And I said, how closer are you to that? He said, I'm not. And at that moment, I understood the lesson from Dr. Ivan Pavlov, which is life. So that life is about gradualness. And today I say it like this. This is how I say it. This is one of the systems that I use for productivity. I say, life unfolds on a gradient scale. And then we forget that, that tomorrow is all about just rolling up my sleeves and going to work. You can't just sit in a lotus position in your living room and expect for the world to change. There's things that you will have to do. in order to change the world, you will have to change things around you, probably starting with you. Probably starting with you, There are things about you and your life that you have to start changing if you want to get there in 3 years or in 5 years or in 20 years. And I know people say it all the time, but I think nobody said it better than Pablo. So you want to increase the productivity of your life, understand that life unfolds on a gradient scale. Does that make sense?
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Now, Marco, you speak all over the world and you educate entrepreneurs on how they can change themselves. Can you explain to the audience in your own influential way, what is the best advice that you have ever received?
Wow, that's a really good question. What is the best advice that I have ever received? See, when a lot of people come to me, I don't have any children, and people come to me all the time and they say, Marco, if you had kids, what would be the first thing you would teach those kids? And this is what I say. I said, teach your kids about emotional mastery. You see, I see so many people in this world who are in jail, who are poor, who are deprived, who are defeated, simply because of things that happen to them in the outside world. See, for some people, maybe there's a tornado that took the house away. For some people, maybe something happened when they were a kid and someone was mean to them, or somebody abused them in any form whatsoever. But all those things, whatever it is, I'm not condoning anything, but whatever it is, those things happen in the outside world. And at some point, that human being had to internalize what happened in the outside world and had to give meaning to that. And what you find is that there's two types of people. There are people who will have developed this strength, this emotional strength, and no matter what happens to them, they give it a meaning that is empowering. And then you have people that no matter what happens to them, they give it a meaning that is disempowering. So I think it's one of the biggest secrets in the world, is teach your kids to master their own emotions. That no matter what happens to them, no matter what happens in the world out there, that they can choose to be happy. They can choose to thrive. They can choose to and I know some listeners are going to be listening to this and say, well, you don't know my situation. And I know, I don't know your situation. But here's the truth. No matter how bad someone perceives their situation to be, isn't it true, Arthur, that we can go out there in the world and we can find someone who started with an even worse predicament and who ended up actually conquering themselves and conquering whatever they had to conquer in order to thrive.
That's true.
There's not a single predicament on this planet that cannot be overcome by somebody who has mastered their emotional mind.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
This is an incredible, powerful outside-the-box interview, and we cover a lot of ground here about building businesses and mastering your emotional mastery. And that's extremely important for entrepreneurs, business owners, and for teenagers, even kids, to basically be in control of your emotions, because if you go outside that control, you don't control your emotions, that can lead to disasters. That can lead to disasters by you becoming a strong man or strong woman, and that can lead to disasters in regards to building your business if you let your emotional side sabotage your blessings.
Yes.
Marco, can you explain to the audience what was the most important day of your life when you experienced financial freedom?
Wow. Oh, my God. You have really good question, Arthur. I like this. You know, when you started your question and you said, what was the most important day of your life, there's a day that popped up in my head immediately. I was 23 years old. See, when I was 22, I just graduated from college, and something happened to me that summer. It was the summer of 1992, and that summer my dad passed away, completely unexpected. And it shattered me. It shattered my dreams. I'm the oldest of two sons, and it kind of gave me a different perspective on life. Mm-hmm. You see, when you're 22 years old, you think you know everything. You think you know where your life is going to go. And you have this idea, this path in your head. I knew what I wanted to accomplish. I knew I wanted to be a business owner. But for the first time, I kind of looked at my life from a different perspective. And I realized that most businesses actually fail. I had never noticed that before. I was back in Montreal, Canada, and I remember walking down the street and looking left and right and noticing that the store where I used to buy my jeans was not there anymore, and the coffee shop where I used to go and study was not there anymore. And I realized in that moment that most businesses at some point will fail, and it freaked me out.
Wow.
It completely freaked me out because I wanted to build businesses, and I'm like, I don't want to fail in life. So I embarked on a journey. I embarked on a journey of discovery at the age of 22. I said, I need to figure this life out. I need to understand business. It started with business to me. How do we succeed in business? And I became a reader, an avid reader, and an avid researcher, and an avid student of business. And I attended seminars, and I read books. There were days, Arthur, where I read 3 books because I took some speed reading classes. I could not stop. I was so hungry. I needed to figure this out. I needed to understand why that so many businesses fail, because I didn't want to fail. And about 1 year into this, I remember I'm sitting on my couch. I'm 23 years old. I remember the moment like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading a book, and that's the moment that I realized that most businesses are based on systems. Because the idea that I had in my head at that time was this, that why is it that franchises don't fail? I mean, you start 100 franchises today, you go back in 10 years, in 10 years from now, you're probably still going to have about 85 or 90 franchises still in existence. You start 100 businesses, in 10 years you might have 5 or 6 left. Right? What's the difference? It's systems. So one of the most important moments in my life is the day that I discovered that businesses are based on systems. So I cannot emphasize this enough, how important it is to systemize your business. But then here's the kicker. Who does the systematization? You see, I've been training people around the world to systemize their businesses for years and years and years, and then what I find is that there's 2 types of people. Some people do it, some people don't do it. So you have to become the kind of person who's actually going to be doing this. That's the second revelation of my life. That is the second revelation of my life. Now, so those are very important moments in my life, to understand that businesses is based on systems, and then years and years later I understood that not everybody is actually willing to systemize. And the people who are willing to do whatever it takes to systemize their businesses, those outlier entrepreneurs, they change the world. And that's simply because you said, what is the most important? You said your financial independence or something like that. And the day happened. I think it was in April or March of 2000. I had the year before I sold my businesses, and I had invested my money. I started a financial company in the Bahamas, and I got myself a condo in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And I was 30 years old. I was sitting on the beach. I was working probably 5-6 hours a week, just managing my money. And I had achieved it. You know, I was 30 years old. Actually, when I arrived in Puerto Vallarta, I was 29. But by March, my birthday's in January. By March, I was 30 years old, and I had achieved what most people do not achieve in a lifetime. I was a very, very successful man. Mm-hmm. And then something happened. I started to call my bank, and then they wouldn't call me back. And I started to call some of my partners, and then they wouldn't call me back. And then I started to get the